Now join me. We're going to use this handmade Viking axe in the tree behind me and turn them into a meal. That's right, guys. We're eating cambium. The idea today is to cut down a tree to thin out the canopy and promote new life and new growth. A lot of people have said you can eat cambium layer and survive. Well, you can see why they never cut the tree down. I'm hung up. We have fire! So the best compliment to cambium, if you have it, is bear fat. So let's find out how it really tastes. Before you go all crazy and start hacking down the whole tree, do a test spot. You want to see if this is edible. If you get that at the right time of year, what will happen is the inner and outer layer will separate very easily. Just like so. The outer, garbage, not edible. But the inner should be sweet. Stringy, but entirely edible. Now you may be concerned with killing the tree, but the fact is if you don't go all the way around the tree and girdle it, it'll continue to live. And historical records have shown that Native Americans used to eat this very famine food when food was scarce in the spring by doing this, because they would find markings like this on trees all throughout the forest. And what they found was that the tree was still alive and thriving after many years. The tree itself is nourished by the cambium layer all the way around, and as long as nutrients can be pulled up through the bark to the top, the tree will continue to live. Now the problem with harvesting from these trees is you can only reach so high. Historical markings showed that trees were stripped up to 6 feet tall, and for good reason. You couldn't reach up further than that, and it was a lot of work to cut a tree down. So you'd find damage on trees scattered throughout the forest, where they would strip them down and eat them. Now you might be wondering, what would you eat it with? Well, they could be added with stews, they could be fried in oil, or they could be dried and stored for later, although rare. Because they were famine food, they weren't something that was meant to be stored. And over time, they could spoil, which is the case right now. If they're not properly treated, the sugars in the cambium layer will spoil, rendering it totally useless. In fact, it turns yellow and rancid very quickly. So the idea is to collect it and eat it. As you can see, there's no shortage of pine in this forest. The problem is, none of this is natural. This is the brainchild of our modern thinking. A monoculture of pine, devoid of any life, completely open and exposed to the wind and elements. Animals despise this forest. Why? Because there's no place to hide. It's wide open. Animals are nowhere to be found because it would be easy for me to find them. So the idea today is to cut down a tree to thin out the canopy and promote new life and new growth. So not only will we be getting a meal out of it, but we'll also be producing habitat for new life. Well, you can see why they never cut the tree down. I'm hung up. So not only is it a ton of work to cut these trees down for the energy you get back, but now I'm hung up in the tree. So now what am I gonna do? Not even the squats are helping me right now. I need to get me my horses. That doesn't put me any closer to a meal. Now, as you can see, over a very short period of time, I've managed to collect a lot of the cambium layer. Now, not easy to collect, but the problem is it delicious? Not really. This variety is kind of bitter, tastes like you would expect, tastes like it smells, like kind of pine sap. So, would I recommend it? Not this particular variety, but I've had better variety. Can't talk like that. But it's very stringy and it's difficult to chew. So you can imagine making use of this is kind of tricky, right? You can't just eat it. I would recommend probably cooking it into a super stew. It would be a good thickener. You want to cut up into little pieces so it's not all stringy, because you don't want to be pulling a big piece of stringy mess out of your throat. It might make you gag. So what I would recommend doing with this is cooking it up as a chip or crisp in some oil. That way it will crunch up and theoretically snap apart and break into in your mouth and eat it like a chip. But in order to do that, you need to make a fire. Next thing I want to mention is that this stuff's not good all year long. It would be difficult to harvest any other time of year besides the spring, because the sap's not flowing as much, and it'll be difficult to separate the outer bark from the inner bark. So that's a concern. So people who say, well, you could survive off cambium layer, it's everywhere. Yeah, it is everywhere, and it is available all the time, but this stuff is not the greatest stuff to eat, difficult to process, difficult to turn in edible form, and like I say, it's not available all the time. It's only available in the spring in any palatable way. All right, now that we got a bunch of cambium, let's make a fire and cook it up, see how it tastes. This whole woodlot, it's a tinder bundle now. All the lower branches are completely dry, so it's not hard to find your kindling. In fact, just grab these branches here, snap them off, you get handfuls of the stuff very easily. All these lower branches are completely dry. Thankfully the ground's still frozen, so we don't have to worry too much about the fire burning down. We'll make sure it's put out. We've got a big spring storm coming in later today, which is going to completely douse this area with piles of rain, so I'm not concerned about that at all. I've got myself my tinder bundle. I always keep this stuff dry. It's cedar bark. We'll add some birch bark to it. You can see how powder dry that is. I keep it nice and safe and dry, so it's always ready to go. Now, this spindle's about had it, but I think I got an ember. It's too smooth in the center now, but I do have an ember. People like to say well, people have said I've done a cutscene, so no cutscene. Ready? Here's your ember. Okay, we're gonna move the camera. It's really tricky to be moving the camera around while doing this, by the way, and I did do it while nursing the flame. It's still in there. You can barely see it. And maybe we'll do this here. You can see it's living happily in there. I don't know if my cedar bundle is big enough. It might burn my fingers. Some people have said you like to blow along, so hey, blow along. Almost there. Just about. Almost. One more blow. Magic! We have fire! When I got fires, I don't mess around. When you got that flame, use the heat, get wood on it, and fuel it fast. Now, it may be hard to tell, but this is already starting to yellow and go off color like fruit does. So it doesn't have a very long shelf life. We've got a cast iron pot, pan, very handy for bush cooking. You can shove this in excessive amounts of heat. Problem is it's heavy, so it's not portable. So the best complement to cambium, if you have it, is bear fat. Lard, pure animal fat. So what we're gonna do is heat this up on the fire. Once that's going, we're gonna add our cambium, turn it into chips. A lot of people have said you can eat cambium layer and survive. So let's find out how it really tastes. You see, it very much looks like a chip, but more like a piece of burnt wood than a chip. But the real question is, can you eat it? It's actually not bad, but it's actually not great either. It's a little bit like burnt wood. The fat's nice in it. Could really use some salt, some flavoring. I'd say if you were in a famine, you could eat it. But it's not all that good. Edible, but not incredible. So a couple things. First is that different species might taste differently. This one started off bitter, it remained bitter. So my advice would be to find something that starts off sweet and then go with it. So the trick would be to find a tree, test it out, find it how it tastes raw, and if it's good raw, continue with it. If it's not, abandon it completely. Because this tree hasn't improved in flavor by cooking it. So I'm not going to completely write off all trees. I've had another tree before that was sweeter. This variety just happens to be not sweet. So there is a chance of redeeming cambium and finding a tree with sweeter cambium. So the question is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. You can eat cambium. Can you eat in quantity? Probably not. Not this variety anyway, but maybe a different variety. So let's reserve cambium layer as an emergency food, a survival food, if you absolutely 100% need it. And let's strip out the cost of fire, cutting a tree down. Let's say you have plentiful amounts of it, and you can strip off the bottom 6 feet. Go right ahead, eat cambium. But make sure you do it in the springtime. It's not something you can eat all year long. So there you have it, cambium. Edible, but not incredible. Just want to finish this topic off by saying, yeah, Native Americans did eat cambium, but the reports of it are slim. Meaning, if you were a bark eater and you're a native, and that's what you did, you long ago went extinct. And that's just a fact. Now beaver, they can make a living eating cambium, but they have special digestive system, and they probably have a much different palate than we do. Our palate is simply not designed to eat that bitterness. Whereas a beaver can eat it all year long. It's something that we're not adapted to do. So, yes, it can be eaten, but it's not something that I would encourage you to go out and do. Maybe experiment for fun, but not something that I would rely on. In an emergency, yeah, maybe eat a tree. I mean, beavers can do it, why can't people? But people aren't beaver. And beaver are adapted to a different environment than people. Humans are predators, scavengers, omnivores. We can make use of lots of different things. We don't have to rely on trees and just plants. We can eat everything, and we should eat everything. So I'm gonna wrap this up. Thanks for joining me. Hope you guys enjoyed seeing that really cool Viking axe. I thought it was pretty neat. And join me on the next one. Feel free to subscribe or not. I don't care. I'd also like to thank Riot Axe Chuck for lending me his really cool Viking axe. Thanks a lot, buddy. He's located in Guelph, and he's got an axe throwing company. So if you guys want to come out and throw some axes, give Chuck a ring. Again, that's Riot Axe in Guelph. Just go put that into Google. You should be able to find it, no problem. Stick with me. I'm going to show you how I'm going to turn this custom handmade Viking axe and the tree behind me into a delectable meal. We're eating cambium.